Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Canadian Research Security Weekly Roundup. It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026, and this is episode 32. We have got so much to get into today, so let's just jump right in.
So let me just ask you this. How does one single engineer manage to walk away with over 2,000 secret AI files from a tech giant like Google? Yeah, we're going to get into that whole wild story. A secret startup, a massive heist of trade secrets, so stick around. We will definitely get back to that, I promise. But before we dive into all that international drama, let's take a look at what's been happening right here at home in Canada. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster this week. A real mix of some big wins and, honestly, some pretty tough news.
Yeah, balancing act is the perfect way to put it. It feels like this massive push and pull. On one hand, we're seeing these incredible investments pouring into innovation. But on the other hand, some really deep cuts are hitting foundational research. It's a very strange dynamic.
All right, so let's start with the good news. Quebec is making a massive play here. We're talking $100 million for a new venture scientist fund from Mila and Innovia Capital. And the goal here is pretty cool. It's all about turning brilliant AI researchers into actual entrepreneurs. You hear these stats. Canada has something like 10% of the world's top AI talent, but we only get, 2% of the VC funding? That's nuts. So this fund is trying to fix that imbalance, to keep our amazing talent and our intellectual property right here where it belongs.
And it's not just Quebec. Out in Manitoba, they're dropping nearly $17 million on 2 new high-security research labs at the University of Manitoba. And this is a big deal. We're talking about crucial facilities for developing vaccines, for studying really high-risk pathogens, stuff that, believe it or not, used to have to be sent out of the province. So this is a huge, huge win for building up local capacity and training the next generation of scientists.
Okay, but remember what I said about a balancing act? Well, here's the other side of that coin. While the provinces are spending, it looks like the federal government is starting to pull back.
And this is a big one. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada just announced they're closing 7 research operations across the country. We're talking places like Guelph, Quebec City, Lacombe in Alberta, and even satellite farms in Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. It seems to be part of this wider government plan to shrink the public service, and it's going to affect hundreds of people.
And as you can imagine, the reaction has been, well, not good. The Agriculture Union came out swinging, saying these cuts are going to set agricultural research back by decades. Think about that. They're talking about everything from food safety to crop sustainability. They're literally calling it a generational setback. Wow. And if that wasn't enough, there's another challenge bubbling up here at home. It's not just about cuts, it's about access. A new report is basically saying Canada's falling way behind on making publicly funded research, public. We all pay for this research through our taxes, right? Billions of dollars go into it. But unlike in the US, we're not very good at making sure we can actually see the results. It all gets locked behind expensive paywalls, which just slows down innovation for everyone, and frankly, it makes you wonder what you're paying for.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit and look at the global picture. It really is like a giant chessboard out there right now. You've got nations moving pieces, forming these powerful new alliances on one side, but at the same time, they're building up these digital fortresses to protect their own turf.
I mean, look at the flurry of activity just recently. You've got Italy and Germany cozying up on research and innovation. The US is publicly calling Taiwan a vital partner, and that's all about AI and semiconductors. Then there's India and the EU creating a whole new strategic agenda covering tech, security, you name it. Everyone's picking their teams.
But yeah, this is the perfect illustration of that other side of the coin. While all those countries are building bridges, others are definitely building walls. Take France. They're going all in on digital sovereignty, basically kicking out tools like Zoom and Microsoft Teams to build their own. And then you have Norway, who's getting really serious about tightening the safeguards on their key technologies. They're worried, and probably rightly so, about who's getting access to their know-how.
So this whole dance of competition, partnerships, and protectionism, it's not just some abstract political game. It has very real, very serious consequences. And that, my friends, brings us into the shadowy world of espionage and the steps countries are taking to fight back.
All right, remember that question I asked at the top of the show? Well, here's your answer. A U.S. jury just found a former Google engineer, a guy named Linwei Ding, guilty. And the story is just wild. While he was still collecting a paycheck from Google, he was secretly transferring over 2,000 confidential files. We're talking the blueprints to their core AI infrastructure. And get this, At the exact same time, he was setting up his own competing AI startup in China. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It is the definition of economic espionage.
And you know, as bad as that is, this kind of thing isn't just about one company losing its competitive edge. The stakes get so much higher when we start talking about national security and sensitive defense research.
There's a perfect example of this playing out in Australia right now. A huge $180 million defense project is suddenly under the microscope. Why? Because it turns out the lead scientist on the project had previously co-authored research papers with scientists from China's People's Liberation Army. Now, to be fair, this was before a lot of the stricter rules were in place. But it has absolutely ignited a massive debate about how we vet researchers, especially when they're working on these sensitive, dual-use projects. You know, tech that has both civilian and military uses.
So you see all this stuff happening, corporate theft, questions about defense research. It's no surprise that the threat of foreign interference is on everyone's mind. So what's Canada doing about it? Well, we're getting our first ever foreign influence watchdog.
The person tapped for the job is Anton Bugman, who used to be the Chief Electoral Officer out in BC. His new title is Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner, and his main job is to run a new registry. Basically, if you're in Canada acting on behalf of a foreign government, you're going to have to sign up and make that relationship public. It's a pretty direct answer to all those growing worries about who might be trying to influence our institutions from the shadows. So, you step back and look at all this. The competition, the collaboration, the very real threats. And you have to ask, right? What's the path forward? How do we keep innovating and moving ahead in a world that feels this uncertain? Well, one really interesting idea that's starting to get some traction is this concept called lean tech transfer. The old way was for universities to build these huge, expensive, permanent departments to try and commercialize research. This new model is way more flexible. It's all about being adaptable, using outside partners, and keeping costs down. Think of it less like a big, slow institution and more like a nimble matchmaker, connecting the brilliant researchers with the right industry partners. It's a really smart way to get innovation out the door, securely and without breaking the bank. And really, that brings us to what might be the single biggest question in this entire field. In this new era of super intense global competition, how do we protect what's ours, our best ideas, without just locking them away in a vault where they can't help anyone? It's like, how do you build a fence without building a fortress? That's the tightrope we all have to walk. And it's the big question we'll keep exploring right here. Thanks so much for tuning in.